think we're live. Yeah. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Back for another Power Hour.
Great to be here.
I've got the ladies Amy Chronis and Teresa Thomas with Deloitte in the house today. We're going to be talking about 3 trends that are really popping off in the upstream oil and gas space. Amy, it's good to have you back. We you on the podcast, was it 6 months ago?
I'm not sure, but it was
a long time ago.
It was fun.
Everything's a blur post-COVID, right?
But, the good thing for both of us, everything's been moving onward and upwards.
Absolutely. You've since announced your retirement?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So what's next? What are you doing?
So I'm leaving Deloitte on a great note with a great successor like Teresa,
okay.
who's our new energy and chemicals leader. And I'm really looking forward to a new life chapter. I'm gonna have more time with my grandchildren. I now have one with 2 more on the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so exciting. But I'm also going to stay engaged in the energy industry through my board roles. I recently am joining the Kinder Morgan board. I'm still going to be active with the Greater Houston Partnership, especially with the energy transition work. And I'm also on the board of Texas 2036, which is a fact-based policy, nonpartisan policy institute for the state of Texas, so it's very energy related.
Wow. Yeah. So, it sounds like you're definitely going to be keeping yourself busy then.
Busy, but not quite as busy. So
not quite as busy.
Looking forward to more running, relaxing.
When's your final day? Do we know?
A couple weeks from now.
Couple weeks?
Yeah.
It's coming up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this could very well be like one of your last public appearances as a representative of Deloitte.
For sure. Wow. Absolutely.
Teresa.
So I'm here to have fun.
Teresa, you got big shoes to fill.
No kidding. I hear that a lot, actually. But there is no other Amy. So I'm going to give up on trying to fill Amy's shoes. I'm going to bring my own and give a run at it. So she's laid some great foundation for us, and I'm inheriting a fantastic practice that she's helped to build.
What are you most excited about? Like, what are your hopes for Deloitte over the next few years?
Well, certainly there has never been a more exciting or important time to be in the energy industry, and energy and chemicals specifically. So much change, so much opportunity. That's really exciting. And so that means there's a lot of ambition for us to continually evolve and innovate our offerings, our capabilities. How do we take, the over 3,000 practitioners and make sure that they're staying ahead of the curve so that our clients can continue to stay ahead of things. So it's really exciting, and there's probably no better industry that's as anchored to purpose on making a difference in the world. So that's pretty exciting for me.
So I want to just really quick address what may be obvious to some and maybe not obvious to others. So a lot of people know the Deloitte name. They may not know exactly what you guys do. Who wants to take a stab at just kind of high level what it is that Deloitte does?
Amy, you want to do that? Is one of your last public?
That's
Deloitte
right.
Deloitte does that.
Deloitte does that. So most people don't know, because we're a partnership, not a public company, that we're a nearly $65 billion global organization. And
that's a humble brag.
Just drop that in.
Just drop the mic on me.
But the reason we're so prominent is because of the work we do serving clients in 4 key businesses, which is audit and assurance, tax, and we would say consulting and advisory, which includes a whole menu, a whole gamut of very important value service to bring to clients. So
love it.
Over 150 countries, and it's been a great pleasure to see this partnership grow and expand.
Teresa said, this is the most exciting time in energy, I think, probably of our lifetime.
Bar none.
Could be a little biased considering this is what I do all day.
Well,
however, there's just this perfect storm of things that are happening, and a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today, right? So number one, AI is eating the world, right?
Yep.
And so the cool things about that is that, for one, our demand for power is just absolutely through the roof, right? And I think it's highlighting a few bottlenecks in being able to deliver that power across the energy value chain. So we can kind of dive into that today. I think sustainability continues to be front center and top of mind for everybody, and the industry has made tons and tons of headway, particularly around methane emissions. That is their product. They don't want to lose it. Oil and gas companies want to do the most that they can there. So some things we talk about there. And also the new energy space. it's an energy addition. We need more of everything, right? And so it's really exciting to see all the investment that's been going into things like hydrogen and CCUS. Renewables are continuing to evolve, though there are some challenges on the transmission side. So I'm excited to dive into this with y'all. I'm seeing a lot of things from my perspective. Y'all are seeing a lot of things from y'all's perspective with all the clients that you guys are working with. And so let's talk about the one that I'm most excited about, which is AI. I think everybody's really excited about. So AI has completely eaten the world since we've talked. I mean, I know ChatGPT kind of just was coming into the mainstream whenever you were here last time. Since then, it has blown up. You've seen all sorts of new AI applications popping up, Claude and Perplexity, and it's getting more advanced by the day, right? How should these companies be thinking about AI?
Well, first, I think that you always start with the end in mind. So a commercial centric, like how can I do what I need to do better, faster, cheaper, smarter? So starting with the end in mind on what are we really trying to enable? And I think then it becomes a commercial solution or something that will aid the business versus a digital project or a digital solution. That's one thing that I've seen the evolution of that I'm really excited about. We used to see something called digital programs or digital projects and our clients, and now a digital mindset really built into nearly everything, every project that there is. And so AI is just one other way that we can do that can make testing faster, that can repetitive tasks. I know AI is not new, but the power of it is really what's unlocking value.
The generative aspect.
That's right. It's really become exponential.
Yeah, it's super, super exciting. I think you're absolutely right. I think that as with all kind of technology projects, I think AI is no exception of really understanding what is the business use case, right? Because it's very easy to try to boil the ocean. It's like, we have all of this data, let's just apply AI to everything. And that's not really where we're at. There's a lot of preparation that goes into actually prepping, a lot of these models to actually ingest this and actually make sense of it. There's a lot of AI startups that are popping up every single day. We're seeing a lot of the existing incumbents in the space in every single industry, right? If it's HubSpot and your CRM or Salesforce, they're deploying AI, right? Everybody is talking about this. It's super interesting. On the implementation side, talk me through what are some of the use cases that you guys are seeing kind of specifically on the AI side?
Well, what I think is exciting, I know I'm very focused on energy, but I love the cross-industry learning and collaboration that we're seeing on use cases that maybe had originated somewhere else, whether it's life sciences and healthcare or telecom, something that started out as using AI to do drug testing even faster, to take biomedical data and use those models to do drug testing and trials much faster. And then thinking about the transferability of those use cases to our industry for geology, testing, seismic, evaluations much faster to really bring insights sooner. I think that's really powerful. Some of the things that outside industry on maybe in the telecommunication space where field agents were using large language models to query something, to troubleshoot something that went wrong in the network or on a line. That has incredible application for our space here, whether it's to troubleshoot a pipeline or predictive maintenance, getting in front of when something goes wrong and using AI for that. So those are pretty exciting and kind of real in the field business applications.
So I think what's exciting to me is that, coming into this industry from the technology perspective over the last 11 years and seeing how things have evolved. For one, it's been really, really cool to see how the industry has rallied around AI and really embraced it. And I think while there are some risks, and we'll dive into that, I don't think they're as scared of that is the same way as they were scared of the cloud 10 years ago. That was a very daunting thing to a lot of companies. Remember, so my first startup, we were doing a lot of well production data in the cloud. That was our competitive advantage. We were the only ones that were doing it. And companies were like, what is the cloud? How do you put my data in a cloud?
I
don't understand. How do I get it back from the cloud?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's crazy how we've evolved as an industry and started to really, really rally behind a lot of these new technologies. I think the promised land of like, where does all this go, is being able to really ask, any sort of like chatbot, any question about any company information, whether it be, standard operating procedures, whether it be company policies, whether it be technical knowledge through, technical manuals, white papers, whatever. Right. Because particularly as an energy industry, I think it's such a pivotal moment for us because we've been experiencing kind of the quote unquote great crew change for the last like 20 years. We've got a lot of the older generation that's getting out and taking all this domain expertise with them. Amy, you're leaving Deloitte. They're losing all of your brain. What are they going to do?
I'm leaving it in far better shape. There's no doubt about it.
And don't think that we're not taking advantage of every minute that we have for. Absolutely.
But yeah, being able to, really get the answers that you need at your fingertips. I mean, I think that's the ultimate promise of AI. I think what comes along with that is also a lot of risk. And I think groups like you guys are probably thinking about that more than others. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Sure. And as it's, when you said it's the topic of the day, at Deloitte, our 475,000 people are like, it's AI every day that, we are aggressively investing. We've spent over $2 billion in habit and process in terms of acquiring talent and strategic alliances. So, before I mention the risks, let me just mention things like, in terms of how we're doing that. Our acquisition of SFL Scientific gave us amazing people, scientists, PhDs, graduates with many STEM degrees. They're all relevant for this. And NVIDIA is helping us expand to unlock the value and create, as Teresa was mentioning, incredible use cases. So the risks we're seeing, I would say, are threefold: a lack of accountability, a lack of consistency and reliability, and privacy concerns, which is leading to this kind of scary environment that people, as you mentioned, that I think much more intense than when cloud first came out.
Yeah.
Right. So we're telling around prevention. The company need to steer clear between the Gen AI model and the business deploying it to promote accountability, because no model itself can be held accountable for its outputs. So the oversight, really, that's why I was asking before around the human resources. That really does remain the ultimate quality control remains a human domain.
A human element of it.
Right. That's not going to wait. And I think people are so concerned around losing jobs. They're going to be using AI to do jobs better.
Yeah,
for sure. So the lack of consistency and reliability, companies are going to have processes that promptly address issues and have well-trained staff. Again, further upskilling. It's a great opportunity for our labor force. I wish I could start over. It'd be a lot funner, right? Doing things better, faster,
right?
But particularly with regard to bias and ethics, you're going to have real emphasis on those to ensure reliability.
Because if you think about it, I mean, those things, maybe bias exists today with people, but if that gets built into a model, that bias just becomes exponential and amplified so much faster. So that's where, some real thought and care and control around how the models are built, and then reviewing the outputs.
Right. Yeah. In regards to privacy, you're going to have the ability to leverage and allow customers to opt in and out of sharing data.
Yep. I think the biggest risk is brain atrophy. I think too many people are blindly trusting the AI because, for one, it can return absolutely fantastic results. However, there are some times where it completely hallucinates. I was using Claude 3 the other day. It's one of the best models in the entire world, and I asked it a very basic question about some recent events. It was 100% wrong. It was very confident in its answer. And there was 10. There was
going, whether it has the answer or not. It's going to make something up.
Well, I think, I was going to say it can make things up.
It was. I was asking about the most recent M&A transactions and energy, and it generally got the companies right. The dollar amounts were all wrong, and who bought who was completely wrong as well. And so, if you were just to take that at kind of face value and run with it, as with just about anything, you can make a lot of mistakes there. So I think you're absolutely spot on.
Brain atrophy is the risk.
Brain atrophy is definitely the risk. So don't just accept things and be like, oh, this thing's just going to do my job for me. That's just not the reality.
No, the human oversight, there's still many hours of work involved.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's all kinds of science fiction out there on just that, or movies with that risk is very clearly depicted. So that is something that organizations are going to need.
But, just like with cloud, people have to be open to the change and willing to learn new skills and up their game.
Have a digital mindset. I mean, that's probably the thing that is most changing and companies and organizations and people, just the iterative process of continual learning that should have been a thing always, but the pace of learning really is required to be so much faster now. So that digital mindset, to be agile and innovate on an iterative basis. I mean, generative in ourselves, if
Absolutely.
you will. It's exciting, but it can feel overwhelming.
I think one of the coolest advantages that you guys have is that you see so many different things from kind of a 30,000-foot view from all the clients that you're able to work with. What are some of the global trends that you guys see that are kind of affecting the energy space?
Sure. Well, obviously there's lots of talk around all the geopolitical risks out there and things that are changing every day. I mean, it wasn't that many months ago where people weren't worried about shipping in the Red Sea. So it keeps changing. But I would say the positive thing is that there's strong financial position. The oil and gas industry is expected to have a strong 2024 due to the strong financial position and high oil prices, which have, they've been on the rise and maintained pretty constant since December of 23. Natural gas prices, however, are slowly declining. It may lead to some producers to curtail production. Market consolidation is having an impact. You're going to see higher gasoline exports and lower refinery production, which will be interesting around whether that tightens summer conditions. Interesting, LNG exports are going to increase. Despite the permitting pause on the U.S. Licenses, gross exports are expected to increase because there are 3 of the 5 LNG projects currently underway for export are coming online. So I think that's positive. The financials, I don't think we can underestimate what the last several energy cycles have done in terms of strengthening the industry. The downturns forced all of this. We talked about this before, brought about this discipline, this operating discipline, right? That really wasn't there in some of the previous go-go years. And so that financial discipline and the strong balance sheets that are current right now, they've clearly increased shareholder expectations, and that's going to continue. People aren't going to do it. But I also think it's exciting that there's increased expectations of shareholders around the energy transition, and there's the surplus cash to do it. Our recent research shows that there's going to be an $8 billion of surplus cash flow, free cash flows in 2024. So
it's a good change of pace over the past few years.
Yeah.
It's starting from a position of strength.
Yeah, last year was even bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
we're expecting continuing free cash flows for the next several years, which enables these kind of investments, right? And the investments, with AI opportunities coming on board, can scale. We hope can scale up faster. So I remain really excited, even though there's significant. I think we're going to talk about some of the technologies that are out there right now around energy emission reduction, but there's still huge innovation gaps. And so to me, you're talking and helping foster startups in clean tech and other digital innovation. So all positive. And there's investment capital available for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing that, some of those geopolitical events that you had just mentioned, I think has helped to shine the light on the fact that the need for security. Everybody's really excited about energy transition and newer, cleaner, greener. Yes. And we need to be safe, reliable, and affordable, and secure. And so some of these kind of conflicts and things like that in other parts of the world have really, I think, tempered the conversation to be a bit more balanced around all forms of energy are going to be required for the foreseeable future. We just need it to be affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner. So even the stuff that we've been doing historically, but we just need it to be cleaner as well, on top of scaling new technologies. So I think some of those world events that Amy had mentioned has really tempered the conversation to be a bit more even around, really, it's not something that new is going to take over tomorrow, but rather all forms of energy will be needed.
So before we dive into the technologies on the sustainability side, do you guys see much on the policy side that's affecting all of this?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the U.S. is really right now a pretty favorable place to do business for new and clean energies in terms of drawing a lot of investments here, whether it's tax credits or on the consumer side. That's really prompting and influencing demand, because Everybody wants to be clean, but not everybody wants to pay for it because it's expensive right now. So in order to incentivize to help scale these technologies, policies are really important to spur and accelerate the progress.
Right. And permitting, we must have faster permitting.
Yeah, we talked about this on a call before. You've, in my opinion, you've got the admission kind of talking out both sides of their mouths with things like the IRA is used to stimulate and incentivize a lot of the innovation in the space. However, they've overlooked some of the very basic needs. Like if you're going to build a renewables project, you need transmission lines. Well, guess what? It's going to take 15 years to get the transmission lines.
Well,
what's the point of the project?
Credits, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to get permits to get going. So
that's right.
It's slower than we'd all hoped, but moving.
Okay, let's dive into sustainability. What do you guys see in that space? I've seen tons of companies that are moving towards things like certified natural gas with groups like MIQ, Project Canary. Tons and tons of money is being spent on retrofitting certain types of valves. Companies are really putting their money where their mouth is on sustainability. How are you guys thinking about this? How should companies be thinking about this? Are we where we need to be, or is there still a lot of room to improve?
Well, we're certainly not where we need to be.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Well, that we're not where we need to be. Yes, there's lots of room to improve. Yes. But organizations are focused on it. So that's the good news. And given the capital discipline and the healthy balance sheets that many have, the money to do that, to invest in that and invest in the new technologies where they're leveraging. We see a lot of organizations thinking about what am I already good at and how can I leverage those capabilities adjacent to what I already know to rethink things and do it differently. And so really leveraging my skills on my kind of core capabilities that we have, whether it's getting minerals out of the ground, like we're good at that. And so how can we use that in a different way? And in addition to investing in new technologies, completely different than something that they've ever done.
Yeah, there are amazing geological assets in this region of the world that stand ready to be better utilized.
Is there anything that nobody's talking about, or maybe any unpopular opinions about sustainability today?
I don't know that there's anything nobody's talking about. I think that it's really quick to overlook something. Again, for a very balanced conversation. So with every answer or solution, we need to be careful that the pace or the way that we go about it, we don't create another or a different challenge. So hydrogen's fantastic, clean energy. It can be very clean. There are a lot of use cases. It uses a lot of water. So, something to think about. I don't know that nobody is talking about it. People are talking about it. But sometimes the pace at which the conversation is happening, we need to be careful that we don't overlook and move such that we're not ready for what would that look like? How do we make sure that we don't upset the balance of something else? So I don't know that people aren't talking about it.
Well, I think people are realizing it's going to take longer.
It's going to take a while.
And for instance, there's been recent articles around hydrogen. Well, the credits are going to run out before these things get built, perhaps.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a recognition that although right now it's considered a necessary technology to get us where we need to go, without government regulation, it's just not cost beneficial yet in terms of the demand. So there's things to be solved.
So do you see companies still wanting to make the investments? I mean, you talked about things like the credits expiring. And so if those incentives aren't there, it's obviously economically challenging for some of these projects to make any sort of sense. Are companies still dumping a lot of cash into it, saying, because in the same way, you can position it the same way as shale, right? We torched essentially $200 billion to get to the points where now we have cheap and abundant oil and gas once again in the U.S., right? That's just the cost of innovation. Do you see the same cash still flowing into these kinds of investments?
Yeah, there are
and at the same rate.
Yeah, there are companies that have publicly said they're building right now. So there are a couple very large entities, especially with in the Middle East and here, they're moving forward on hydrogen building.
Yep.
Regardless, and I think there's the hope of the hubs that are being started that the regulations will continue to evolve to make it positive progress.
Yeah. Are you guys doing much on the CCUS side?
Yeah, So, do you want me to
Go ahead.
So, what we're seeing with CCUS is that right now, unless there's other technological advancements, net zero will not happen without it. There's no path to net zero emissions by 2050 that doesn't include it right now.
Again, all forms of energy, we just need them to be cleaner. And so that means capturing the emissions.
Right. And so right now, the oil and gas industry accounts for 1/3 of the CCUS facilities, but it's not without controversy. As you know, there are those who oppose it because they believe it'll prolong the use of fossil fuels. The perception may be grounded in the fact that much of the CO2 captured today is used for enhanced oil recovery. I would argue that's not a bad thing. That we need to, the benefits are that it's a current available technology. It's lower cost versus other emissions abatement technologies right now, and you have the opportunity to retrofit, like you spoke about. That getting existing industrial facilities better, and if you can do those CCUS technologies, absolutely, I think that's good. The capture quantities, the costs are strongly dependent on concentration of CO2 in the stream and the total amount produced each year. So the Inflation Reduction Act helped expand and increase the economic incentives behind it. So right now, in the available innovation that's out there, CCUS is necessary.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go down the line. Geothermal. What are you guys seeing in that space? There's doing some massive new innovations that we've seen with guys like Fervo.
I was going to say right here in Houston, or Houston based, right?
Yeah.
It's something that the Secretary of Energy is pretty excited about. If you've listened to her, Jennifer Granholm recently, is really bullish, I'll say, on geothermal and the power beneath our feet and how can we harness it. And it's been around, so that's not, again, something that's completely new, but how can we scale it, make it more cost effective, really, I'll say, leverage the areas that it's conducive for, because there are geologic requirements that make it really, that are needed, I guess, for it to be attractive site or the places that you can get it. So that's pretty compelling. It's renewable. So it's hard to argue with those things. So that's something that there is a lot of interest in. Organizations, I think, are cautiously optimistic, or at least the ones that I see on that. But there's a lot of excitement around it, I think, in certain pockets.
I think what's cool is you can take all the lessons learned from oil and gas on drilling geothermal wells.
Again, what are we good at?
Yeah.
How do we take what we're already good at and those capabilities and then pivot and use it for a different use case?
Diamondback Energy recently announced that they're doing small modular nuclear reactors at the well site. We've only had one nuclear facility permitted in the last 40 years, right?
Yep.
Is anybody chattering about nuclear in y'all circles?
Yes. And not just in energy and chemicals.
Yeah.
There are. We mentioned about this, that it's the recurring theme that we need all the above. The small nuclear reactors are one of the above, and it's too bad we didn't start sooner, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, we think it's a positive piece of the puzzle, and definitely, those small nuclear reactors they use about 1/3 of the generating capacity of the traditional nuclear power reactors, and they have so many different applications. To your point around electricity, hybrid energy systems, heating, water desalinization, steam for applications. Chemical, and other subsectors, I would say chemicals, manufacturing are there's a couple prominent companies that have them underway. So, there's so many benefits. I mean, obviously people are aware and scared about the potential adverse if there's a safety incident, but they require low operating pressure, low power. They create low carbon power. There's no, very little human intervention. There's so many benefits that I could go on.
Nuclear is great. I mean, I think if it was invented today, we'd be like, all of the world's problems are solved.
We'd be so proud of ourselves.
We were just too early.
Yeah, right. If we could get to where we had prefabricated units that could be manufactured and then shipped and installed on use, the reduced fuel requirements would be huge.
Yeah.
It would be, they'd require less refueling, like say every 3 to 7 years between, versus 1 to 2 years for conventional plants. From what the technology that's already out there in other subsectors, they're seeing that small nuclear reactors are designed to operate for up to 30 years without refueling.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Talk about a good battery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All right, I'm gonna throw you a curveball just because I'm thinking about it. So we've seen a couple of the large tech giants buy energy infrastructure. I think it was Amazon who just bought a nuclear facility. Facebook or Meta just bought some other sort of facility, using that to power data centers. We have been in our pulpit preaching that energy needs to do the same thing. Have you seen any, and if the answer is no, it's totally fine. Have you seen any of the energy companies talking about getting into the data center game, right? Because they are the most uniquely positioned. It's an energy play, right? And so they already own the energy infrastructure. And so we're seeing tech go to energy. We're seeing Meta add John Arnold to their board so that they can get smart about energy. And subsequently, I've seen Mark Zuckerberg, in the way that he's talked about energy in his last few interviews, is completely different than he was 6 months ago. Have you seen anybody on the energy side, or are we just kind of blinders on, let's stay in our lane?
I don't know that I would say anybody has blinders on, stay in our lane. I mean, data is really a feedstock of sorts. And so energy companies understand and value feedstock, and data is a feedstock. And the need for this data, they recognize it and the pull for it. I think there's a broader sense of the ecosystem that organizations are working within, whether it's for JVs or alliances or kind of partnerships. It doesn't have to be that we go wholly acquire something to see that in. And it feels like likely pairings in some cases. I don't know that I've seen an energy company, though, say that we're going to go and acquire a data organization, but rather how do I team, partner, have an alliance with to leverage?
Right. How do I get into that ecosystem?
How do I step into it? A lot of energy companies are fairly conservative and tempered in their pace. Capital discipline, you think about that, so that kind of carries over. It'll be interesting to see what we have, because it's probably not that long ago, even some of the new energy investments that these organizations are making, we thought, oh, that'll never happen. So of course it's going to, something like that could happen. Have we seen it yet? Not yet. The tech companies that are moving the other way, tech companies are faster movers, just legacy culture there. Energy companies are fast moving in innovation on things that they know. And
from an engineering standpoint.
From an engineering standpoint, that's right.
But to your point, there's a lot of discussion. Like, for instance, at this year's CERAWeek, I think people were fascinated by hearing that Microsoft is opening a new data center every 3 days.
Right? Every 3 days.
And the expected forecast of how that's impacting the overall grid, right?
Demand.
And so I, to your point, I hear a lot more conversation in power and utilities space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, because if you look at Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, was talking about how he thinks compute is going to be one of the most valuable commodities in the world. And so if you look at it as an oil and gas company, both oil and gas are commodities, and compute now potentially also a commodity. You look at the macro environment where we have these suppressed natural gas prices. That is potentially the lowest cost fuel to remain competitive for building any sort of data centers. And so it's kind of like this natural, it seems at surface level, maybe this doesn't make sense, but if you really break it down, it makes a ton of sense.
It'll be a happy marriage.
A very, very happy marriage, because now you can give yourself, for the natural gas, for the first time in history, you have potentially a better buyer than the market, right? You essentially have digital midstream, and you can use that to power AI at a much, much higher IRR than you will with existing gas prices.
I think it's inevitable that you're going to get some regulatory attention, especially as it becomes common knowledge what these growing data centers, the impact on the grids. And to the fact that you have in Texas some bartering going on, like, well, could you not operate at X capacity, on peak energy full days? So I actually know a ton about this, actually. So there's actually, so in
just got excited.
So in ERCOT, there's actually there's 8 demand response programs, right? And so ERCOT sees value in load being on the grid, right? So the grid has to operate within about a three degree variance of a frequency, right? And so ERCOT pays these sometimes data centers, Bitcoin mines, other kind of like load facilities to participate in these programs, even if they're not curtailing, right? So when we do have peak demand, they are the load that can turn off quickly and they can also come back on, right? And thus stabilize the grid. You have the same thing that happens in places like Oman. And so a buddy of mine was over there recently at a nuclear facility. He was like, the load balancing for a nuclear facility is even more important than it is, say, for ERCOT. Yeah. And he was like, and so they were talking about it for a data center over there. He was like, just the ability, if we made $0 on this data center, just the ability to have the load that you can turn on and off is valuable enough to us so that we can avoid any sort of nuclear meltdown. That's how crazy it is. And so while, yes, our grid is extremely fragile, load is actually a friend, flexible load. If it's non-flexible load, it's not a friend of the grid. Friend. You have to be able to switch on and off to be able to balance things out. And that's not just unique to ERCOT. That's really pretty much every single grid.
Yes, and there's going to be some economic examination of given the growing data demands, the pricing.
Yeah.
Which one way or another will in turn make its way to consumers.
It's going to be wild to see how this all plays out because we have more in Texas alone. I mean, we are becoming like the AI capital of the world just due to the fact that we have kind of cheap and abundant energy and we're embracing it and we're allowing people to build here. There's massive constraints with groups like Encore who build all of the infrastructure here in Texas. And so I think we have like another 80 gigawatts. We have 80 gigawatts, I think, live in Texas. Don't quote me on that. I think I could be wrong. I think we have another 80 gigawatts that is proposed that is coming online like the next few years. And that number's
growing.
It's going to continue to grow. Yeah.
Well, everything's bigger in Texas.
Everything's bigger, especially our power consumption.
Yes.
What have we not talked about yet? Let's see. Anything else people should be thinking about? We dove deep into AI multiple times. I just keep getting sucked back into it. We dove into sustainability. We've talked about all the newer energies. Any other trends you guys are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, energy prices will continue to influence.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's the state of the economy. I mean, manufacturing activity, consumer spending, they're going to influence energy prices. And we already spoke about the geopolitical regulatory landscape to keep an eye on. I would say capital deployment signals priority changes. You're going to see changes in, to your point, with all the innovation and changes going on, you're going to see investment priorities, portfolio composition, and Teresa mentioned JV and alliance opportunities. We think are going to proliferate. Operational efficiencies, continuing huge emphasis on that.
Do you think we're going to see a lot more consolidation? And the reason I bring that up is because we literally I guess we heard yesterday that the FTC approved ExxonMobil's acquisition of Pioneer. It's one of the biggest that we've seen ever, $60 billion, right? We've seen so many other mergers and acquisitions. Diamondback merging with Endeavor is huge. Now they're going to be an absolute titan in the Permian Basin. There's been a handful of others. Do you see this slowing down? Do you see this ramping up?
I don't think we see it slowing down. And with the consolidations that we've seen, bigger can be better in terms of allowing for, maybe not unlike the conversation that we just had about kind of an even demand load and being able to think about that. If you think about the investment and the stability of finances that then can be poured into these new and green technologies, so you don't see as many swing players, I think it'll be less price sensitive. So price will always matter, but with some of the consolidations and bigger providing some stability to that, I think that it could power scale on these newer technologies. And Amy, you mentioned that watch and follow the capital discipline of these newly consolidated, but the pressure on them to invest in new and still deliver the very high expectations that shareholders, stakeholders expect for return. That's a balancing act for them. And I think some of these consolidations probably provide positioning to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot about what is the growth strategy for some of these companies these days. And so from Exxon's perspective, it was cheaper for them to grow through acquiring a $60 billion company than it was to go out and develop $60 billion worth of assets or more. Right. And so, especially since we're not discovering any new Permian basins, at least not recently. Obviously, the shale revolution had completely changed a lot of things. I'm listening to T. Boone Pickens' book, "The First Billion's the Hardest," and it's
easy for him to say.
Yeah. I'm still working on the first billion.
Yeah, it's the hardest.
Yeah, but it's funny to hear him talk about growth and like what he sees is, kind of the future for the industry. And the book's quite a few years old now, and so a lot of things have changed. Some of the predictions he made has come true, and so I think the biggest kind of question marks for me is where does a lot of this growth come through? I think there's two things that I've had a thesis on that I think will continue to get more and more effective. I think we're seeing one of those play out, which is EOR. Right. And so being able to go and do enhanced oil recovery, increase the recovery factor in individual well bores. It's cheaper. You're not having to go out and just completely drill new wells. Right. And so it's cool to see certain groups have a lot of success with that. We'll see if that kind of goes mainstream. I guess the bigger question mark is you've seen recent success of like things like Guyana with ExxonMobil and Chevron and these massive discoveries. That's one of the things that T. Boone got wrong in the book. He was like, you're not discovering any new massive oil fields. And then Guyana happened, right? And so that's one of the biggest oil fields in the entire world now, and that's offshore. And so
does he mention Venezuela?
Not there. No, not in the book yet. At least not in the part that I'm at. I haven't finished it. I haven't finished the book yet. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'd be curious how he predicted there. Okay.
Yeah, but I'd be curious to see if we're going to see any sort of like resurgence in more capital flowing offshore outside of just the Exxons and the Shells and those groups. You've got a handful of pure play offshore producers, but it's a pretty small ecosystem, to be honest with you. So I'm curious if all these new innovations and AI and all this kind of stuff can drive down the cost of offshore development.
Well, to your question, yes, I think there's going to be companies that are going to continue to explore options, and the JVs and I would say alliances will help people commercialize new technologies and while sharing the cost,
sharing the risks.
Yeah, because they're not going to all get it. It'll be interesting. I'm fascinated to see which technology innovation scales fastest, because as you know, there's lots of books that talk about it's not necessarily the best invention that ends up getting scaled.
Google was the 19th search engine to hit the internet. Yeah. 19th, not second, not third, 19th.
So it's who can get popular or accept fastest.
Yeah. All right, I think we got some questions. Let's see what people are asking. First question: how can Houston benefit from a hydrogen economy?
Well,
Amy,
yeah. So, the Greater Houston Partnership through the the Houston Energy Transition Initiative has been very active with this. So, clean hydrogen is clearly going to play a role in reducing emissions in the Houston region. And it has the potential to create what we would think of as a whole new industry. So how exciting is that this frontier just keeps being the next first frontier? The DOE announced the funding for 7 hydrogen hubs, and they're going to bring together a consortium of ecosystem players to bring green hydrogen online. And Houston has the high velocity hub that was selected for DOE funding, and it's supposed to receive $1.2 billion to contribute to bring green hydrogen. It's estimated to create 45,000 jobs. So think about that, 45,000.
That is exciting.
There's a number of startup companies. The problem is there's been a recent article as well. It's slow, right? Because the DOE is taking quite a while to first allocate the funding for the viability studies, then the plan, the next use. So I think people are impatient to get shovels in the ground. And so to your question earlier, there are companies that are just going ahead and building separate from that. But I think the high velocity hydrogen hub is exciting. There's a number of startup companies here that are developing the next generation of technologies for hydrogen. And I think it's also, we are just a natural rich place in terms of a certain level of built-in demand with shipping, trucking, aviation, the geological assets we have, the engineering talent. We will be, I think, the strongest hydrogen hub.
I think Texas could be the strongest. The strongest country in the world, Texas.
That was the post-Deloitte forecast.
You're not associated with remarks that Amy just made. But I mean, really, Houston, it really does fantastic things for Houston being known as not just the energy capital of the world, as we'd like to call ourselves, but really energy transition capital of the world, and all of those investments, and what it does for jobs in the communities, and kind of advancing skill sets around innovation. That's huge for Houston.
Yeah. I'm hoping we'll call it the energy evolution happens here.
Love it. We're going to need everything. I like to think about, especially like for energy needs, it's like, okay, if Elon Musk actually pulls this off and we go to Mars, right? How do we rebuild? Like, how do you build like the ideal grid, and then how do you power everything? It's like, for one, we don't know if there's any natural resources
on Mars,
like period. So like, do we take nuclear to space? Just nuclear work? Maybe, I don't know.
I mean,
who actually knows? But okay, next question. Don't get me going down space travel.
Too late.
We kind of touched on this a little bit. We got a question around, I don't know if you'll have any stats on this. What's the expected new energy demand coming from data centers and AI?
I don't have a stat in terms of megawatts, other than it's pretty astronomical.
Yeah.
If we're building, Microsoft is building a new data center, one every 3 days. Think about that.
Right. The only stat that I can recall at the moment is that there's an expectation that within, I forget the number of years, but not that far out, they'll account for 6% of the total grid in the United States.
Wow. So I just pulled up this,
which is from a tiny amount today.
Do you ever listen to Joe Rogan podcast at all?
My son does.
You got young Jamie in the corner. I'm pretty much my own young Jamie, because it's the first time I have a computer on a podcast. This is kind of cool. So I'm pulling stuff in real time. So this article is from CNBC. It says AI could drive a natural gas boom as power companies face surging electricity demand. And it says electricity demand is forecast to grow 20% by 2030. Let's see what the absolute megawatt hours is going to be.
That's fine. So does it have the prediction of how much of our grid it will represent?
It doesn't, but there is a quote from your company that you're about to be on the board of. The primary use of data centers is big tech, and I believe they're beginning to recognize the role that natural gas and nuclear must play, Kinder said during the call. Kinder Morgan is the largest natural gas pipeline operator with U.S. market share of 40%. Hey, so Kinder Morgan's pay attention to AI. That's good. Yeah, I don't see the actual. Oh, here's our boy Toby in here talking about earnings. Okay. Essentially, we're gonna need a lot of power. There's so many different stats. I don't know which one's
whether
real.
it's 5 times.
Sorry, we couldn't give you an exact stat.
3 times more, a lot.
Right. So get which merits our discussion of it. It's the energy business should look at it.
Absolutely. Any other questions, ladies? Any other ones popping up in here? Well, ladies, this has been a blast. I love nerding out about AI, sustainability, new energies. This has been awesome. Amy, best of luck.
Thank you.
In your new chapter. It doesn't sound like you're going to slow down at all.
I will.
I'm definitely going to hit you up to have Rich Kinder on the podcast for sure. Shamelessly. I'm just going to say it publicly now.
Plug right there.
Teresa, best of luck with everything, leading AI into the chapter. So super excited for you guys.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Y'all take care.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.